Okay, well, I stopped you at the last, just for the last bit, because I wanted to ask you this question. Now, you told me that when you were working in America, in the city, you were on the 105th floor of the Trade Center until March 2000. So everybody knows what happened a year later. You must sort of feel that you had a bit of a lucky escape there, really.
I do. I very much do. It was an amazing time when 9/11 came. First off, my wife got pregnant with my daughter, Charlie, and we decided we didn't want sort of nannies raising her. And I decided that I sort of really wasn't enjoying working indoors and being in the job I had. So we decided to make a change, and it was an amazing thing because on September 11th, I was talking to a friend of mine in the building when the plane hit, Tom Dennis, who when it happened, I said, "Are you going to go up or go down?" And he said, "Oh, I'll just walk down. I'll call you when I get to the bottom." And about 5 minutes later, I didn't even think that much of it, because if you worked in the World Trade Center, planes would come up out of Newark Airport and they'd sort of turn left and they would be coming straight towards the building. And then they'd either veer up the East River, up the Hudson River, depending on where they were going. And long story short, I just assumed it was a small plane that had hit it because he didn't seem very stressed by it. And 2 or 3 minutes later, my next door neighbor, who was a football coach for the Miami Dolphins, came walking through my back door and said, "Did you hear planes?" And I said, "Yeah, I spoke to Tom. He's walking down." He said, "No, another one's hit the other tower." And then I think reality struck. But it was a very tough period because afterwards, I really went for about 3 weeks straight to just 5 funerals a day, and a lot of people, which was very uncomfortable because a lot of, wives and husbands looked at you like, "Hey, my husband has passed away. What are you doing here?" But I was very fortunate to have left. I still to this day teasingly tell my daughter that she saved my life by coming into it.
And to me, did Tom not make it down?
No one from Cantor who showed up. I worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. No one from Cantor Fitzgerald who actually got into the building up to the office survived. It was a very tragic day.
So, I mean, does something like that change your attitude to life and its problems forever after?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the first thing that it does is it takes you about a year to, at least for me, it took me about a year just to really want to go out and live life. But once you do, you very much wake up and go, you better damn well enjoy it because you're blessed to be here.
Yeah. So in that time, I'm happy that you've moved to Florida, which is, I've never been, but apparently it's a lovely place. You ran a tennis club, which seems quite idyllic, and you trained Sophia Kenin, who won the Australian Open. So chip off the old block as far as your father was concerned there.
Well, it's funny. I went back to Florida, and I also played golf as a kid, and I got involved with a professional small golf tour, and worked with it for a few years. And then I got an offer from a club to go back to coaching. I had coached previously, and I took the job. And as it just so happened, I was teaching a few good players. Actually, I was teaching a young boy who actually beat Andy Murray in the juniors. He was playing against him from the Bahamas, Devin Mullings. And I worked with a few very good juniors. And I just happened to see this young girl, Sophia Kenin, when she was about 6, and started teaching her, taught her for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. Used to pick her up at her house and then take her to the courts when she got home from school. And she was just this, cute little button of a thing. And I really, to be honest, which shows you what a dope I am, I didn't think she would ever make it on tour because I thought she was too physically small. But she, got to a 5'5", 5'6" maybe, but she's just so feisty and tough that she's made it on just sheer will and determination. Her father, Alex, has taken over coaching her and has done a great job with her.
Okay, so fast forward to 2013, and you're back in Australia, and you've gone back to bookmaking, so that you couldn't stay away.
Well, my father was getting a little older, and he needed some help because we had a pretty good sized business in Sydney. And I came, and my father had decided that he wanted to expand the business to Melbourne. And it's quite a funny tale. His first day, he decided we were gonna split the time. I was gonna spend part of it in Sydney, part of it in Melbourne, and vice versa. And he went to Bendigo, and he hadn't really been in a ring for a long time because we have these standout lone stands offering, great service, but an across the board type thing. And so he went into the ring, and he had a dreadful, dreadful day, and decided he really didn't like being in the ring, and traded out and went back to Sydney. And to be perfectly blunt, except for big races, I've been in Melbourne ever since.
No, that, and in that relatively short time, it's only 8 years ago, you're now the busiest bookie in Victoria. So tell us a little bit about how you build that up. Because in the UK, you have to buy pitches. That's really now the only way you can do it. It used to be dead man's shoes. Now you have to buy pitches, so you need a hell of a lot of money if you wanted to, and even if they come available, it's very difficult to become that big that quick.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's a funny thing. When I went into my interview with the Victorian Bookmakers Association, they said, you do realize you're going to have to buy a license. And I said, well, I really can't bring myself to buy a license. I'm just going to, well, how do you expect to get ahead? And I said, well, I'm just going to put down for every meeting in the state every month. And when I get my opportunities, I'm just going to keep grabbing them and go to anywhere and everywhere that I can. And how are you going to find customers? And, I said, well, we have a little bit of a method. We have a very customer service oriented business. And I don't think the customers will be the problem. I think that the opportunity will be. In the first year, I think I probably only worked about 12 meetings. And then amazingly enough, I got a tremendous break in 2014. I had put down for a rails position, as you put down for where you'd like to work. I put down for everywhere, but I had on there rails. And Tom Waterhouse comes back into the story because he sold his business to William Hill. And when he sold his business, he gave up his rails positions. And you wouldn't believe, but by some miracle, I was the only person on the reserve list for the rails at Flemington and Caulfield and Moonee Valley and Sandown, which are 4 major tracks in Victoria. And I got right in on the rails. The first day I ever showed up at Flemington to work was Derby Day. I'd never been there before, and I walked onto the track on Derby Day to work.
Okay, then we talked about Tom earlier at the Call of the Card. I'm interested to go back a little bit to this Call of the Card. After you told me about it, I've seen a few videos. In fact, you're on one of them. So basically, it's a big dinner. All the top punters, the bookmakers are there with their prices, and then the punters can call out, the bets they want. Fascinating for over here because there's a lot of restrictions, and the big punters, have a job to get on. Now, you say so is it a prerequisite that when you go, you've got to lay any punter to lose $250,000? Is that the rule?
If you would, yes, it's an unwritten rule. No one's broken it that I've ever seen. But the simple reality is when you ask, say, I'd like to be one of the guys at the Call of the Card, they basically say you're going to have to stand horses for a minimum of $250,000. And I said yes, and got an opportunity to get in, and have now done it for the last, I think I've done it 5 years. Protectionist, when he won the cup, was a dreadful result. And last time we had the Call of the Card, Vow and Declare won the cup 2 years ago, and that was a dreadful result. I thought it was a big risk, and I stood it and had an awful result with it. But it's a fabulous event. it's an event, funnily enough, you talk about buying pitches. Rob Waterhouse and I are good friends, and he's bought a pitch at Ascot, which he's never been able to use since he bought it right before COVID. But I will go with him, and we do this a couple times a year, where I will go and work with him as a clerk, or he will sometimes come to meetings with me that he can't get into and work as a clerk. It always ends up that he's the form guru, the big boss. I'm sort of the money taker, but that's fine because he actually does form, and I wouldn't know how long the races are. But at the Call of the Card, we've had a great experience there, and it's a fabulous event. I spoke to Rob. I said, why the heck don't, when we go to London next year for Royal Ascot, why don't we try and put something on like this at the Dorchester or, anywhere of the hotels in London, and do one leading up to one of the big days of the Ascot Carnival. It seems to be just an absolute logical fit. And I know I would love to do it. I'd love to, and I know Rob would do it. And I can't imagine that some of the big corporates wouldn't send someone, along to let punters on.
No. Well, it'd be brilliant.
It'd be great fun.
It would be. I hope you can do it because it would show up the big corporates, that's for sure.
Well, I know that Star Sport would come.
Well, yeah. I mean, right. Anyway, but that would be brilliant if that happened. I'm sure you get fantastic publicity from it. But I'm assuming that when you're at the Call of the Cards, you've got to lay guys. You see them in there like sharks, just people that you would normally not really want to take a bet to lose $250,000 to. I mean, so why do it?
Well, I think there's a few reasons to do it. Number one is it's very good for your brand. People, the Call of the Card is a fairly big deal in Australia. It does make the news and makes all the headlines around the country. So to have your name associated with it and having people talking about your what you've done there the day before is very good. I think that the Call of the Card is something that I think could be changed and improved. And we haven't spoken about this yet, but I have a lot of theories about bookmaking that are contrary to my competitors. And one of the biggest ones is the Call of the Card has 2,000 people there. And the truth of the matter is, it's really set up for 4 or 5 people to get their bets on. And the small punter who's paying $400 for a ticket can't get a bet, because as soon as Tom Waterhouse says, 20,000 on the $26 shot to win $500,000, I say to win 500,000, I'm now $21, and no one else gets the $26 in the room. And what I've always believed is that we're in a customer service industry, and it might make a heck of a lot more sense to say, why don't we let everyone who wants to have 1,000 on it have 2 minutes or a minute to, take the price, and then let the big guys come over the top and ask to back them to win 2, 3, 400,000.
Okay, so finally on the Call of the Card, are you supremely confident in your own pricing, or are you hoping that the ego gets the better of the punters and that they're going to have a bit too much on that they would normally have because they're there and they've had a couple of drinks? And which is it?
The ego of the punter has never seemed to be a factor. They hit very straight. I have had 3 calls where I've had good results, and 2 where I've had bad results. Vow and Declare was not good, but I laid it at, I think, $13, and I could have gotten $15 on the day back. So technically it was a good bet. And if they ran the race, I think another 20 times, it wouldn't win again. It was just Craig Williams maybe put the best ride you'll ever see. Anyone who's watches your shows should go watch the ride. He's drawn the parking lot and ended up behind the leader before they got to the winning post. Just an incredible ride. And, the English horse looked like it had won. It just ran out of puff in the last 3 or 4 strides and got nailed. So but I do have a slight advantage. I do talk to the boys. I talk to Sean and Kingsley and say, hey guys, what price, do you have these horses marked? And the one thing they've been fantastic about is they might say no comment, but they've never lied to me. They've never said, we have it $20 and me put up tens and get pummeled.